What is going on, Jet fans? Matt O'Leary back with another video. This one's going to be a little bit different. I have my pal Weej on to talk about the biggest misconceptions about the New York Jets right now. All right, I'd like to welcome on Weej, and we're going to get into some of the biggest misconceptions with the New York Jets right now. And I think what we wanted to start with here, Weej, is the head coach, Aaron Glenn. I know you had some thoughts on the kind of pushback fans have on the head coach.
Yeah, I definitely do have a lot of thoughts on it. I think it's very odd, like the dialogue that we've had around Glenn all year. And I can't really remember another time in my lifetime, 25 plus years being a Jets fan, where we've kind of had this such knee-jerk reaction to losing, because we've obviously lost a lot throughout our lifetimes. But I feel like since week 2, maybe week 3, people have been calling for Glenn's job. And it hasn't looked pretty throughout most of the year, but I do think that we're seeing signs of improvement. And I think that it's really extreme. Do you feel the same way? I feel like early in the season, we were maybe 0-2, 0-3, and people were just losing their mind saying to fire Glenn. And I'm like, we've never done that for a first year coach so quickly.
Yeah, I did feel like it started to turn a lot faster, and I started to notice it not so much in week 1, but really after the Buffalo game with how they played, and then the following week against Tampa Bay, the second and third game of the schedule. For me, that was too early to have any sort of those conversations. Now, for just looking at the full sample size that we have right now, 8 games, them being 0-7, I think there's some legitimate concerns that you can have about the head coach and want to see change in the second half of the season from the perspective of, okay, this is what he is or isn't doing well and needs to improve. But at no point through the first 3 games of the year was I going, yeah, this is for sure not the guy. I just don't think we know or had enough information off that point. And I still don't. At 1-7, I think we need the full year to really evaluate what Aaron Glenn is going to be as a head coach.
Definitely. I think part of it too is that Glenn does himself no favors, I really feel. And I do think that that's one of the things that it works. I remember I said it in the offseason. I was like, this is all fun and great, but if you're losing, fans are going to get sick of it and the media is going to get sick of it. And you're just going to get bashed for it when you take this abrasive approach to answering questions and doing all that. So he's doing himself no favors. But I do also think that he has a really tough task in changing the culture of this team. And I hate using that word because it's a word we've heard it more times than I can count as Jets fans. But I do think that I did not hate Saleh as a coach. I think we kind of ran our course with him if the time had come to let him go. But I think that under Saleh, or at least going into this year, I'll go that way. I won't touch on the past so much. We had players who kind of quit, not quit always, but this team needed to learn how to not lose before they learned how to win. And week 1, I kind of saw that a little bit because I remember watching the game. We fumble on that kickoff, Steelers score. And I remember texting a friend of mine and I was like, well, this game was fun because that's what it was. That's what it always is. Anytime there was the slightest bit of adversity, something went wrong, they imploded on themselves. That's what we saw for the last 3 years. But then in that game, they answered right away. They're in right downfield. They scored a touchdown. I was like, oh, all right, maybe we're changing things around here. Maybe we're going to see something different. And in my heart of hearts, I do believe had they won that game week 1, I do think the season does kind of go a little bit differently just because of the fact that they lose that game and they fought back and still lost. And I think that a lot of the core guys who were here the last few years, they just know that culture of losing. So I think for them, for a lot of the players, and this is obviously just assumptions, but it's you kind of just sink back into that, oh, okay, we're going to keep doing the same thing we've been doing the entire time we were here. And I think we saw that with the Bengals game as well, where it's similar to week 1, which feels like it was 4 years ago at this point. But they had the moments where they also started real slow. They put themselves in a hole, but then they did fight back. And then anytime that the Bengals would go down and score, you'd have that same thing of all right, we're done. This is where they're going to do the same old thing. But they kept fighting back. And I do think that's the signs that Glenn is preaching the right stuff within the locker room, that guys are still bought in. And I got to give credit. I think Joe Caporoso was the one who said this, but the fact that Sauce Garrett. You hear these guys, and JJ too, you hear them saying they want to be here. Obviously, Garrett and Sauce signed their contracts. But the fact that even though this team is 1-7, like guys still want to be here and they still want to play for Glenn, it gives me like the sign that it's like it's not so much about like Glenn as a coach, but like it's going to take them this season to kind of turn it around, to kind of like build the like culture of like not learning or learning how to not lose games to also win games.
Hey, I think that's a really good point that you bring up. And, very different in week one where, they had a big lead and then unfortunately weren't able to close it out. This kind of reversed, right? Like they were down in this game and fought their way back, had a lead, and then finally got that stop at the end of the game to close out for their first win. And I think something that I'm looking forward to going forward is to see if we see a continuation of that from this football team in the second half of the season, or if they revert back to some of the issues that they were having in the first 7 weeks of the year. I don't want this game to just look like an outlier. And it's like, oh, well, the Jets got their, one lucky win against the Bengals where, things broke
it's like
right.
Tradition, honestly. It's like the Bengals are like that get right game, but except it's only get right for one game. And then you go right back to what you were.
Yeah, the Mike White game from a few years ago now at this point is a good example of it. But I'd like to see them come out of the bye, and you're playing a team in Cleveland that, yes, they have a really good defense, but offensively they really struggle. You're at home, you're a favorite. Can you show that this is going to be different and have a team prepared out of the bye week, something that I was very critical of the Robert Saleh staff with, and win a game that you probably should at home? I think that's kind of like the next test here for this coaching staff, is if they have their team ready to go out of the bye.
Yeah, I think for me, the big thing is I also just want to see them play a complete game, because I feel like we haven't seen that all year, where it's like so many times we've either seen the offense playing decently well enough, but early in the year, the defense was non-existent, or the defense against the Broncos. And it's like we've had moments of like looking like a competent, well-run football team, but it's never all at once. It's like never all like jiving together at the same time to play a complete football game that actually is what's going to make you like win a game and not sweat down to the end, going forward on multiple 2-point conversions and doing all that. It's like, I just want to see 4 quarters of football where it just looks like a normal NFL game. Cause like you watch other teams play and you just see them move the ball downfield and you're like, this looks so easy. But it's like, for us earlier in the year, I think we've had moments as we've gone later, but it just like, I want to just see it all come together for 4 quarters cohesively.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, this past week they got their win and the offense looked good. They had over 500 yards of offense, but defensively they struggled again. They gave up 38 points. And the 2 games before that, you had the defense finally show up, allowing 13 points in each one of those games. And they lost both of them because they scored a combined 17 points in the 2 weeks. So it would be nice to see this team finally have a game, like you said, where they're normal. It doesn't have to be scoring 40 points, but can you score 24 points and win 24-14 against Cleveland out of the bye and be like, okay, that was a nice, comfortable NFL win, something we haven't seen from this team in 2025 yet. Guys, think you know football? Then try to turn your football knowledge into real money with the Sleeper app, the ultimate fantasy sports app that can turn game day to payday. Just download the Sleeper app, pick more or less on your favorite players. With more stats than any other daily fantasy app, just choose 2 or more of your favorite players from pregame or live. Pick more or less from predicted stats, and you can win up to 1,000 times your money if your picks win. Use my promo code O'Leary, and you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. There's a new offer going on right now, a free $20 no deposit required promo. Terms and conditions apply. Yeah,
I will say too, though, going back to Glenn, that I think that like, while I do want to like throughout the rest of the year, I'd like to see them win maybe another 3-4 games. That's like my kind of bar. I think that like it would be like, I'd be content with what that was. The losses, obviously, like even going into this year, I thought that there was a decent chance we were not going to win, I don't know, more than 6 or 7 games. I thought maybe as a cap, it could have been 9 if everything with Fields worked out in the best case scenario. But I think going forward that it's like, I just want to see them. You don't want to see the things that like make you question if Glenn is the right guy. Because even when we were winless, I was still saying, I was like, this team could win 1 game. And I still think it would be a mistake to fire Glenn, because I do think that just like, I don't know. For me, it's like you brought in the guy who wanted this job, which is crazy. to just say in general, the fact that somebody wanted to coach the Jets. But I don't think there's like anyone else out there where I would say it's like, oh, it's a gigantic upgrade of like a coach. That's just like, I don't know, like unless like John Harbaugh was fired and he's wanted to be the Jets coach. Like that's the guy who's like, you know, it's an improvement. You're guaranteed that. But like, I hear people say like John Gruden should fire Glenn, hire John Gruden, hire Mike McCarthy. It's like, I wanted Mike McCarthy in 2019, but we went with Gase. It's like, why? I don't know. Or Rex Ryan's another one. It's like, I don't want to like live in the past of that. It's like, I like where Glenn is kind of setting the foundation for everything going on. And Tanner Angstrand has actually impressed me throughout the year. I think that if he was getting consistent quarterback play, and it's like, I don't fault Fields as much for being just like flat out terrible. It's a thing that like when I watch him play, it's like a lot of what I saw when we had Wilson, it's like he just lacks the confidence. And I think that really like it started to spiral week one on that first, or not week one, week two against the Bills when he sailed it over Garrett Wilson's head on that first drive we had. And you kind of just saw the confidence continue to go down and down and down. And then he has moments where he brings it back up, and maybe, you know, our genius owner mega brained us all and just instilled it to bring it back in him. We challenged him and lit the fire, and he delivered. But yeah, I just think that like, I don't see the benefit. I feel like people have been so adamant of like, kind of no matter what, even after the win, people are still saying, who cares? Glenn should be fired. He's not a real coach. He's in over his head. And I just don't see it. I don't know. I think it's too like knee-jerk reactionary. And I get the idea that if we're drafting a quarterback early next year, it's like you don't want to set that guy up for failure. You don't want to give Sam Darnold Adam Gase, and then you set him back even more. Then you end up moving on from him. It's like there's a lot of what ifs, but I would rather go with the what if of like going to the next point that I think we're going to move to. It's like I think there's a lot of issues with like issues is a hard word, but like there's a lot of players on the roster, in my opinion, who won't be on NFL teams in 5 years, and we're playing them significant snaps. And I think that like that's a big thing for me is like I hear so many times of like, oh, this is such a talented team. And obviously the Detroit comparison like comes up all the time with Glenn. And you hear so often of, oh, it's this roster is so much better than what Detroit had. Blanking on his name.
Dan Campbell.
Yeah, Campbell's first year when they won 3 games. Oh, this roster is so much better. Well, that roster had Jared Goff, who was an accomplished quarterback who had went to a Super Bowl already. It's like, and they only managed 3 wins. And I think that for us, it's like we play a lot of guys who are not really that like NFL starters, let alone like Michael Clemens, Tony Adams, like earlier in the season, like Leonard Taylor. It's like we play so many guys who like won't be on rosters in a handful of years, and they're getting significant snaps for us. So it's like I think that we overvalue our roster in a slight way. And I think that that's part of kind of where we are and why we only have 1 win. It's like we have good foundational pieces at key like spots. Like we have, I believe, a solid foundation of like a left and right tackle. We have Garrett Wilson. I like Joe Tippmann at guard. I kind of hope we just keep him at guard and draft a center. I think he's looked really good at guard. I hope we don't trade away Breece Hall and that we keep him around for a young quarterback. But on defense, especially, and I think that's where so much of the struggles was earlier in the year. And they probably could have managed to be a little more like competent and win a game or two if the defense played better. But it's like on defense for me, it's like we have Sauce and we have Quinnen. Those are the 2 guys I look at that are like solid. I want them on the team going forward. But it's like we paid Jamien Sherwood, who I don't think is as bad as what he's playing right now. I do think he's like a little bit just like searching for answers. You can kind of see it like he's a step behind. And I think that that's maybe just the transition into being, I feel like he's just like sort of trying to be CJ Mosley in that like he's trying to be that leader who directs traffic, who knows where everyone should be and should do that. Where in the past couple of years and why he got the contract was that he just played instinctively. He played what he was doing. He did what he was told and did it right. So I think that like I hope at least that he bounces back to form. But outside of that, it's like, I don't know. I don't see many other guys. Like I think Brownlee was a great trade phenomenal addition by Muji. And we just obviously saw that they went with him over Michael Carter now that he's traded. But I think that, yeah, the roster, I think just needs a bit more reconstruction to like see what this could actually be. Obviously, quarterback would make a lot of, consistency at quarterback, I should say, at least. Doesn't need to be phenomenal, but just consistency. I think that would make a huge difference in what we actually see in results. But defensively, especially, I think it's like we have so many players that just they're average NFL players, and we view them as maybe higher than that. And I think that maybe like shifts our perception of what this team should be. And we can then throw it all on Wilkes and we throw it all on Glenn. And it's like, sometimes it's like players just need to make plays. Yeah. And I think that that's a big thing. Like we, for a lot of the season, have been great on first and second down and on defense, I should say. And then no matter what, it could be third and whatever it was against the Bills, third and 19 or 20 plus, whatever it was. And you're like, oh, they're going to convert. And we've seen that throughout the year. It's like higher level talent. And also as they play together longer and kind of know each other's assignments and how they bounce off each other in coverage and whatnot. It's like that will all come together, but it's like I hate to just like throw guys under the bus, but it's like Andre Sisco and Tony Adams are getting a high snap count at safety. They're both not great. It's like, it's kind of, you get what you get based on what the players are. So I think it's as they continue to bring in guys that are their own and that they think can fit what they're trying to do, I think we're going to see a big difference.
Yeah, and I think something that they need to do, and they've started to do this with like the Jarvis Brownlee trade, I think they need to get some of their own guys in here. And there was a little bit of that in the offseason, but I think that is something that has to continue and go into next offseason. We saw it. They moved on from Michael Carter. He was, a good Jet, part of two really good defenses in 22 and 23, but I think injuries started to take over a little bit and just clearly wasn't really fitting in this new system. They find Jarvis Brownlee, he's on a cheaper contract for the next 2 years after this year, and you can move on from Michael Carter, and you take a flyer on a wide receiver like John Mechie, and you're kind of just looking for answers. And I think this was an evaluation year, and maybe my expectation was off. I predicted them to be a 7-win team, still not a winning record, but I thought they'd be a little bit further along right now than what they are. But I think it's an interesting point that you bring up with the state of the roster, and maybe our expectations should have been lower to begin with going into the year. We kind of overinflated some of our own talent.
Yeah, I think it's also hard because you do have the argument of like, I think still even currently had an all-pro at every level. And that is true, but it was also in the right scheme with Saleh and Obrook that was able to maximize players. And I think a lot of us know it's like they were so stubborn defensively and like, this is what we do and this is how we do it. And for a lot of guys, that maximizes what they're able to do. And I think what we're seeing now is that we are more flexible. We are calling more what the scheme is versus what the players are. And I think that is kind of part of it where you see guys kind of get beat a lot, run defense especially. I think like Harrison Phillips, I think is one guy who I think has like been a bit disappointing, or I expected more. I shouldn't say disappointing, but I expected a bit more from him coming with that trade. I really liked him in Minnesota, but I think I think it will just take a bit more time just for them to kind of get the guys in that do what they do. And I think Brownlee is a good example of that, probably the perfect example of that, where they identified talent that wasn't on their team. They were able to say, this is what we want you to be because this is what we think you can do. We know you're a great run stopping corner. We trust you in the nickel. And he's been playing very well. So I think it's like, that's the kind of thing that gives me optimism in them finding their guys. It's like, and Briggs is another one who I think all of us had never really heard of him before that. And he's played great all year. So it's that kind of thing where it's like, I like to see the fact that they're identifying talent that's not on their team. So they're just going off tape or they're going off conversations with other coaches and scouts and whatnot. And it's like, they're able to pick guys to come in and then we see them do well. Like, I don't think we've really brought in anyone who has been an entire outside of the draft, but like at least free agent or trade, but has been like a real flop for them so far.
Yeah, no, I think that's a valuable point, right? Like they decided to bring in some of these guys, and like whether it's Josh Reynolds in a small role or Tyler Johnson, I think you can maybe argue that they should have done more at some positions, like at wide receiver and safety jump out a little bit to me. But I think you have to grade a little bit on a learning curve also, because you have a rookie head coach, you have a rookie GM. It's going to take a little bit of time. And I know Jet fans don't want to hear patience in a 15-year playoff drought, but that's why I wanted to bring you on. Your perspective's a little bit different than I feel like kind of the mainstream, where it's well, fire Glenn but they're not getting enough out of this roster. And you're kind of like, well, no, like, let's give it a minute here. This roster isn't as good as, what it could be. And Aaron Glenn's, learning on the job and really wanted to be here. So let's give him the time. So I appreciate that perspective.
Thanks for having me on. I think that doing the content I do in Madden, covering all the teams in the NFL, but being a diehard Jets fan, it's like I'm very dialed in on the players we have, and obviously all the things they do right and wrong, because I watch every game and watch all 22, just because I want to understand what I'm actually talking about if I'm doing content or whatever it is. But being familiar with other teams' rosters and the way that they've constructed them, and obviously Madden is just a poor simulation of what is in real life, but it's like you do have an idea of roster construction and what actually does translate to wins on the field. And I think that I don't know, I don't have as much negativity. It's a bummer. I don't want to be 1-7, but and I'll never tell anyone how to root, but it's I don't know. It's I'm not gonna sit here and say the house is on fire and Glenn was the one who lit the match and poured the gasoline. It's the fire was already there. It's he's doing his best to kind of bring it down, and it just takes a bit of time. It's I think that in year one, again, it goes back to he doesn't doing himself no favors. It's earlier in the offseason and whatnot, they spun it as we're here to win and we're here to win now. It's part of that could have been, smart Jets PR of saying we need to sell tickets and we need to get season ticket holders to keep buying. But it's so you're not going to spin of oh, this is a full rebuild, we're going to be bad, and then we'll see what happens. So I think maybe part of that could just be in, positive PR. Also, I think it's you don't want a coach who's going to come in and say, yeah, we're going to be pretty bad, but we're going to do our best. That's a bad message to the locker room. It's you want that coach that believes no matter what, even if we're lacking in talent, that we have the ability to win games. So yeah, I'm just not as down, I think, as a lot of people. There's a lot of regular podcasts that I would listen to that I'm I can't listen to it regularly anymore, because it's just obviously because the results that the Jets have put up so far haven't been great. It's it's a bit too negative for me. I'm just I like to hear nuanced takes from Badlands and Turn on the Jets and you guys. It's it's that kind of thing where it's there's layers to this. And I think that while it sucks, and I think that the idea of just accepting, oh, maybe next year will be better. Oh, it takes time. We've done this for our entire lives and rarely has it ever been great. But it's I don't know. I think we are 8 games in. The rest of the season will be the rest of the season, and that will definitely play into the evaluation of how we feel about Glenn going forward. But yeah, I think that a lot of how can we trust this regime to pick the right quarterback at number 1 and develop him? I'm what have they done to say they can't? Obviously lose games, but it's it takes time to bring in the guys to actually do what you want to do. And if they don't do it after that, then yeah, they're not the right guys. But it's I don't know. I don't think anyone should really be fired outside of just pure incompetence. You don't get fired after 1 year. I don't know. To me, it's that's the example I always think of is, I think it was the Thanksgiving game. It was the Bears and Lions last year. Maybe it might've been 2 years ago. Yeah. Where they had a timeout. We're going downfield. That you can't end the game with a timeout in your pocket in that situation. It's that kind of stuff. And Glenn has had those weird moments at the end of halves, kind of letting the clock run out and all that. But that's not game losing situation. So it's that kind of stuff from what Eberflus did is fireable. It's that cost you a game, and that's directly on the coach. But then against the Bengals with Glenn, it's we did see those really, heads up things, and had the right people in his ear to say, no, this is the time you go for 2. This is the time you use the challenge. And we've seen that. So I think there's enough pieces that they've done throughout the first half of the year that do give me optimism, that say these are the right people who understand how to do it. You just have to give them the time to actually let the players, get into the system, get the right guys in, and then we see where it goes. I mean, they could be terrible next year and then they're gone after then. But it's like right now, it's like I'm not gonna just throw them away just because we're a bad team when we expected to be a bad team. Like no rational real person thought that this was going to be a playoff team going in year one. So it's like, yeah, they've won less games than you might have expected. Like the people who picked them to win 5 games, they're like, oh, they're going to win 3 games. That's terrible. Fire Glenn. It's like, those are maybe 1 or 2 1-score games that flipped. And then it's the exact same result you expected, except you're freaking out, which I just don't get. I don't know.
No, and I think that's totally fair, which is, why I wanted to have this conversation. I appreciate you joining me today. Can you give the listeners who maybe aren't familiar with your content where they can find you and what you have going on your channel?
Yeah, it's youtube.com/Weej. I make Madden content around the NFL, post every week and cover every team in the NFL. I did a video recently I played Madden until the Jets won a Super Bowl. It was a mistake. So typically I don't do just Jets focused content. I do content all throughout the league. I like to do very like scenario based things where it's like giving every team the best quarterback they've ever had or running back, receiver, whatever it is, building scenarios that play around the current NFL, what's going on, but changing things up to see how results go. Because like many of us, or like us Jets fans, people are fans of teams that are bad. They want to see their teams be good. And sometimes changing 1 or 2 things and seeing how it plays out in Madden can make for some really interesting results.
Absolutely. Make sure to check out the content. It's a lot of fun what Weej has got going on over there. That'll do it for us on this one, guys. Please leave a like before you head out. Subscribe if you're new, and we'll catch you next time.